name is Jack. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. So I came out of the closet when I was about 15 years old. I come from a very masculine, sportsy, middle-class, suburban background. And I think just the pressure built up one day, and I wrote a very long Facebook letter explaining to everyone that I was gay. In the letter, I made sure to remind people that I'm not that sort of gay. I'm still a sports gay, I still wrestle and I play football. I was the sort of gay that called other people faggot. I made gay jokes. I was really, really trying to stress my masculinity and perform this role. I'd chat talk with the boys. I would go out to parties. I would get really drunk. I was just genuinely acting like an asshole because I was afraid that if I slipped up at any point, I would sort of lose this sort of social status that I thought I had. When I went to college, I decided to not go to a college that I liked. I decided to go to a very masculine school. I went to Indiana University. I tried joining a fraternity. I went to football games, and I was just generally really depressed. And I was drinking a lot, and I was having a lot of unsafe sex and was suicidal. And then eventually push came to shove, and I decided to change things up. So I came home after my first semester of college, and I decided to go to Sarah Lawrence College, which was smaller. It was a more arts-based school. And I was still telling my parents that I was pursuing a career in political science, but what I really was interested in was writing and theater and performance. I made these really weak, cowardly baby steps towards joining the theater. I would go to meetings, but I didn't sign up for any classes. I went to auditions for my first semester, the fall semester there. I went to auditions, but I think at the time I told myself that I had just forgot to prepare an audition piece, but I think in my head I intentionally didn't prepare anything. And I was sort of already purposely pushing myself into this position of just being an asshole or sort of a pariah. So luckily what wound up happening is one of the directors of one of the plays, I remember it was for the basement theater, it was for the smaller theater, he asked me if I wanted to be his stage manager. He was come to auditions, he's help me read, and he was you could get involved in theater this way if you're too nervous to be a performer or do any of your own stuff. So we went to auditions, and he had me read for this character, Warren. This Is Our Youth is kind of a coming of age story, 3 kids in a love triangle, 2 guys and a girl. They party a lot, they do a lot of drugs. And he had me reading for this character, Warren, who is depressed, who's very shy. As I was reading the role, I found that I was really good at it. I found that more so than the other people who were reading the role, I could sort of acclimate myself to the character's speech patterns, to his specific timing, etc. They wound up offering me the role. They were just you're good at this, you should just do it. You've read for the role anyways. And at the time, I told myself I was excited because it was pages and pages of dialogue. So I got the role, and we started rehearsing. And at the time, I was still drinking and partying a lot. And I remember, the first couple of rehearsals, I kept on nearly sabotaging myself. I once came 2 hours late because I woke up in my bathtub because I fell asleep in my bathtub, covered in glitter. The other 2 people who were in the show too, who wound up being very good friends of mine, were also sort of wild child partiers. And so with the director, we sort of worked out this system of rehearsals. He sort of incorporated our social lives into it. So rehearsals were very calm, we'd have a beer and we'd talk, or we'd go outside and smoke cigarettes and walk around. We started rehearsals, and the other 2 people in the cast, one of them who was sort of the main guy who was acting opposite me, who, funny enough, so I was playing the depressed, sad, inward character, which is how I really was. And he was sort of playing like the really hot, very arrogant, gregarious guy, which is what I thought he was in real life. So when we started acting, I only knew this guy by reputation, and he was kind of like the suave man about town. Like, everyone wanted to sleep with him. He was very rich. He was like a former TV star when he was a child. And I was like really scared that he was going to overshadow me or that he wouldn't like my performance. What wound up happening is this guy that played opposite me, who played, you know, sort of the beautiful, arrogant best friend, wound up becoming my best friend because I realized that all those things that I had placed on him weren't true. And then continuing the process, all the things that I placed on myself or thought I should be weren't true as well, because he wound up being a very sweet, great guy. As the process went along, I just learned to be all right in my emotions, and I learned to like be all right with not being traditionally masculine or not always being the center of attention. I sort of began to realize that there are ways to center myself without hurting myself and others. And so the production happened. It was the big production of the semester. I remember I was very proud because we sold out each night and people came to see the show. And I remember after the show with sort of like my friend group, we went outside to smoke a cigarette afterwards, and one of them said, "Oh, that's like not the Jack I know," or something, or like, "Oh, I didn't know you had that in you the entire time." And I was sort of realized I was sort of like, "Oh, that is me though," and I was like, for once you're seeing the real me. The way I changed after the play was I think I was just more comfortable living in sort of that area of not knowing. I'd still, to this point, have problems with substance abuse, and I still, you know, am trying to conquer anxiety and mental illness. But there's no Sturm und Drang, I guess is the term, about it. I don't put on a show for people anymore, and I really don't ask people to put on a show for me. So before I was performing this hypermasculinity, and I think now I just don't really care, but really just like allowing myself the space to figure myself out and not worrying that there's anything I should or should not be.